Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of our/malicious compliance. You need to leave my car alone. If you say so. This is not my story but my friend Adam's. Adam is a retired police officer and this takes place in the mid-90s, back when Adam was a beat cop maybe a year or two into his service. At the time this story takes place, a firebug had targeted several businesses over the course of a 3-month period. The fires were put out but they were getting bigger and bigger, causing thousands of dollars in damage. Everyone was on edge and the police were patrolling the area every night to try and catch Mr. Firebug. On this particular night in the middle of February, Adam and his partner, Rick, drew the short stick and thus were assigned to patrol part of the area. While on patrol, he notices a classic Mercedes-Benz pulling up to a house and a familiar lady dressed in a thick fur coat steps out. He groans. It's the wife of a local business owner that every officer in this town have had the displeasure to ticket for various parking and traffic violations. It would have been fine if she were a nice lady or something. But no. Her 3 default sentences were, "Don't you know who I am? Where's your manager and supervisor, and I'll have your job." Seriously, she was a Karen before Karens were even a thing. Rick points out to Adam that Karen had parked right by a fire hydrant. Par for the course. Adam gets ready and steps out of the squad car. "Good evening, Mrs. Entitled, ma'am," Adam said. "What are you doing here?" Karen bellowed. Adam guessed that's the Karen version of the word hello. Working the beat. "You do know you parked next to a fire hydrant?" "So?" Karen said. "I'm suggesting you move it before I write you a ticket. I'm not in the mood for extra paperwork tonight. Listen. You need to leave my car alone. Or I'll have your job." With that, Karen storms off to the house, goes inside and slams the door. Adam thought "if you say so" and proceeded to check the outside of the car for any more violations and wishing that being a B word was a federal offense. As he's putting the ticket under the windshield wiper, the call everyone's been dreading comes on the radio. A fire alarm has been triggered. The address? Right across the street. Adam looks over at the building and can see a faint orange glow in the windows on the 2nd floor. He reports the glow. He and Rick get ready in case Mr. Firebug decides to cross their path. Several officers arrive and set a perimeter around the building as the glow gets brighter and brighter. Unfortunately, by the time the fire department gets there, flashover happens and all the windows on the 2nd floor get blown out. It was so hot that Adam felt sweat form on his face. The fire department need to get the hoses set up. But Karen's car is in the way. Using safety hammers, they break the windows and run the hoses through, getting everything set up in record time. During all of the chaos, Karen comes out and she sounds like a banshee that had swallowed an air raid siren. She runs over and tries unhooking the hose from the hydrant. "What are you doing? My car is ruined." It took 2 officers to restrain her and bark at her to go inside and let everyone do their jobs. She actually listened and returned inside. Adam spent the rest of his shift helping with the fire and investigation. It was close to dawn when he returned to the station to finish up. All he wanted was to go home and crawl into bed. That's when his supervisor calls Rick and him over and reports that Karen reported several $1,000s worth of damage. Not only had her windows broken but water had gotten in and froze because it was, again, the middle of February. The supervisor asked them what happened and they reported everything. Fortunately, the dashcam caught a recording of the event. The supervisor shook her head, laughed and said, "Well, you had nothing to do with the car getting damaged, so I consider this closed." A few weeks later, they caught the firebug, a different business owner who was trying to commit insurance fraud. He figured that if several other buildings caught fire, nobody would think he was responsible for burning down his own business. Unfortunately, Karen never did seem to learn her lesson, so she was back to racking up tickets and being a thorn in the police's side. She did have to pay for the damages and the ticket Adam gave her. Next story. What are you going to do about it? Call the cops? I was explaining to my mom what malicious compliance was and she reminded me of this story. I was a senior in high school when all of a sudden I got sick at school and had to be sent home. Because my car was in the shop, Mom had to come get me. It's about 9:30 a.m. when this happened. As we're driving up a very busy street, we see two 7 to 8-year-old kids, we'll call them Frank and Zelda, trying to cross. Worried, Mom pulls over to see what's going on. The conversation went roughly as follows. Mom, kids, are you guys okay? What are you two doing here? Frank, Dr. Idiot said we couldn't come to school early, so he sent us home. Now Mom is very familiar with Dr. Idiot. He was the principal at the elementary school my younger brother was attending at the time. My brother, Mark, was going through some behavioral issues at the time, and Mom was commonly called to the office, to the point they were on a first-name basis. Not that he allowed her to use his first name because I have a doctorate in education. So it's Dr. Idiot. So in other words, he was an entitled idiot. There was a gas station 10 feet away, so Mom tells Frank and Zelda to meet us there. We pulled in, got some water for the kids as it was a hot day, and Mom calls Dr. Idiot's cell phone. Again, the conversation went roughly as follows. Idiot, this is Dr. Idiot. Mom, hi, this is Mark's mom. I have two kids here named Frank and Zelda, and they say they were sent home early? Idiot, yes, their parents dropped them off at 6 a.m. because they had to work. Something about mandatory overtime. Of course, we're not a daycare, so I just told the kids to go home and wait for the bus. Mom, are you kidding me? We're 5 miles away from the school. They walked all that way. It's a wonder they weren't hit by a car or kidnapped. Idiot, what are you going to do about it? Call the cops? Click. Mom was absolutely floored, but she decided to give Dr. Idiot a nice dose of reality. At the time, we lived in a small town. How small? So small that sometimes the chief of police would have to walk the beat. And that day, he happened to be a block or so away from the gas station. When he got the call, he arrived, got the whole story from not only Frank and Zelda but from Mom and me. And, being a father of two elementary-aged kids himself, he was pissed. He looked at Mom and said, "Chief of Police, it's time I had some words with Dr. Idiot." The chief of police drove Frank and Zelda to the school in the squad car, which they were super excited about, personally escorted them to their class, and then marched to Dr. Idiot's office and proceed to tear him a new butthole, telling Dr. Idiot that he'd help the parents press charges on him for child endangerment, among other things. From that day on, Dr. Idiot allowed Frank and Zelda to be at the school early on the days their parents had mandatory overtime. Update, so I got some details from Mom about why Frank and Zelda were just dropped off at school. Their aunt works at the elementary school and had agreed to watch them until school started a couple of hours later. She wasn't on the clock. Frank and Zelda didn't live in a good part of town, and their parents, understandably, didn't feel their kids would be safe if they were alone. If Dr. Idiot had driven them home to wait for the bus, it wouldn't have gotten on the chief of police's nerves. Update 2, as for why the aunt didn't see the kids? The parents dropped the kids off 10 minutes before the aunt arrived, and Dr. Idiot assured them that he'd watch the kids for the 10 minutes. Once they were gone, he told the kids to scram. When the aunt got there, she came in a different direction, so she didn't see them. He told her that the kids hadn't been dropped off. Since they were at workplace was very anal about cell phone usage, she had no way to reach them to confirm that. She had no freaking clue what really happened until the chief of police turned up with the kids in tow. And yes, I have no idea how Dr. Idiot kept his job. Next story. Packing details matter. When we were packing, I numbered all the boxes and used color-coded labels for each and had a running inventory sheet for each box. I packed the entire house by myself. Well, the kids helped with their toys. My husband didn't do the garage till I forced him to. I kept asking him what's in the box so I could list and number it so we knew what was in it. He lost patience and said, "There are wrenches, screwdrivers and crap like that, dear." He does this for multiple boxes. Saying things like, "It doesn't matter, it just needs to be packed," and "never mind the list, the movers are going to be here soon," etc., etc. So I dutifully write this down. Cue the malicious non-compliance. Fast forward, we are moved into and renovating the new house. We are beyond stressed because there are birders and wallpaper that were applied by Satan, which delayed painting, which delayed carpet, etc. Hubby is looking for a specific tool. Asks me what's in a specific numbered box. I can give him specific details, but tell him, that's orange, which is kitchen. You need blue, which is the garage. So he goes over to the boxes labeled in blue with the garage stuff in it. There's a pretty big pile. He knows that I can find stuff in the boxes I packed and asks which box is the tool he wants in. I tell him he didn't give me a lot of detail. He points to a box and tells me to read out what's in the box. I read out wrenches, screwdrivers and crap like that, dear. He gets a little annoyed and asks about the next one. I say it doesn't matter, it just needs to be packed. I handed him my log and just told him that's what he gets for not cooperating. He had to go through about 20 boxes to find the right one. Next story. You're my battle buddy. That means we look out for each other and you're not to leave my side. Got that? Yes, sir. This is my friend, Belle's story and takes place in the mid-90s when Belle was a senior in high school. Belle had a cantankerous great-uncle named Todd. Like many people in Belle's family, Uncle Todd had served in the army. After being honorably discharged, he took up the family's homestead and worked as a farmer while the rest of the family lived in town about 20 miles away. Uncle Todd was a real old salt. And when I say salt, I don't mean salt of the earth, I mean saltier than a sailor. He was the kind of person who would sit on the front porch with his shotgun and a box of salt pellets waiting for any neighbor kids to try and steal from his prized apple orchard. Needless to say, you were either on his good side or his bad side. Most of the family were, sadly, on his bad side. Somehow, Belle got on the old man's good side early on in life and he didn't give her near as much grief. When she showed him her letter from West Point, he had tears in his eyes. Beginning when she was a freshman in high school, she was hired to help him out as he was getting up in age. Every day, before sunup, he'd pick her up in his battered old Ford pickup and drive her to the farm. Every time they arrived, he'd tell her, "You're my battle buddy. That means we look out for each other and you're not to leave my side. Got that?" She'd snap a salute and say, "Yes, sir." They'd get about their day and at the end, Uncle Todd would drive her home and pay her for the day for a job well done and treat her to a Coke and a sandwich from the town grocery store. Belle has many fond memories of that old man. That being said, there were some days that he'd be particularly grouchy. This particular story takes place on one of these days, right around Christmas time. Even though most of the family was on Uncle Todd's bad side, he'd still host Christmas dinner as tradition dictated. Once again, he hired Belle to help him prepare the house for the family. Belle could tell the old man was unhappy about something, so she decided to stay out of his way as much as humanly possible to avoid getting chewed out. That being said, he growled and grumbled at her so many times that day that it got on her nerves and she wished that she had elected to stay home. All that said, she was still being paid, so she decided to stick it out. They were on the second floor of the house, cleaning out the rooms when Uncle Todd went to the storage closet at the end of the hall to get more linen. Now I say storage closet, but it was a small windowless room that was too small to be a bedroom, so it became a storage closet. The lock on this door was the type that would lock on the outside, and unless you had a clothes hanger or knew how to disengage the lock on the inside, there was no unlocking it. Unfortunately, it was a flimsy lock, so trouble was bound to happen. Uncle Todd was in such a foul mood that he slammed the door to the closet shut after he entered. It was so loud that Belle jumped. Unfortunately, he slammed it so hard that it damaged the flimsy lock. She heard him cursing and trying to unlock the door. Then she heard him bark. "Belle!" She stepped out. "Yes, Uncle Todd? Damn door won't unlock. Can you unlock it from your side?" Belle decided to get back at him for his nasty behavior. "You're my battle buddy, remember? I'm not supposed to leave your side." Cue a stream of curses from Uncle Todd that would have made a sailor say, "Well, I never." He then finished with, "You're fired." Belle had just intended to let him stew for a few minutes while she found a clothes hanger to jab the lock. But he had sealed his own fate. "I'm fired? Okay, I guess I'll head home then. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow." "Wait. I meant from being my battle buddy. Bye," Belle said. "Get back here. Right now." Belle snickered as she left to the sounds of him cursing and begging her to come back. Now she had no intention of letting the old salt stay there all night. Since he had the keys, she couldn't drive the pickup truck, so she elected to walk to the neighbor's house, which was about a couple of miles down the road. She was strolling down the side of the road when a squad car pulled over. A young man looked at her. "What are you doing out here, ma'am?" "Oh, my great uncle Todd Logan locked himself in his house and I was going to get help." "Todd Logan?" I wasn't aware the old man had any family. He said. "Yep, he does." Belle said. "Well, son of A.B. Word." The young man said, thinking for a minute. "Hop in. I'll help you get him out." "Thank you. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Nah, I was delivering some things to my grandmother's." "She'll understand if I'm a few minutes late." Belle got in and the officer turned around, taking them back to the farm. Unfortunately, the lock was damaged to the point that jabbing the clothes hanger in the door didn't work. So the officer had to kick down the door. All in all, he was there for maybe an hour or so. Uncle Todd was nice and quiet and mumbled an apology to Belle after thanking the officer. Belle walked the officer back to the squad car, and while they walked, the officer introduced himself as Adam Smith and asked for her number. She gave it to him and they started dating after that. Uncle Todd was a lot nicer to Belle after that. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.